authority to add a warrant or change a warrant. That's on the table. Never been a debate about that. The concept, however, about adding incremental warrants or an additional closed or capped warrant, I believe that is totally within the discretion of the select board. That is yet to be established definitively. So part of what my approach to this whole thing has been is open discussion, public discussion, that's all. How a vote goes is how a vote goes, up, down, yay, nay, that is we all accept that. However, unfortunately, the average town resident does not pay attention to all these meetings, doesn't read our minutes, doesn't know all of the background before something appears on the town warrant. The suggestion, for example, in one of our conversations with the select board that, for example, if town residents supported the library, they'd give it more money, is an example of that. I don't think it's that the town residents don't support the library. They would have no idea of the discussion that transpired prior to town meeting. All they're going to see is one number and not really be aware of what happened in the background. I absolutely agree, and we can say this all we want. It's really up to them to go find this out. They can go look, they can do this, they can do that, and that's absolutely true. But I'm saying that as a public official, that it's partially, I feel it's my responsibility to make this information and the issues before the town as publicly accessible as possible. And that means at the annual town meeting. So what I'm asking you to consider is, I know we can only recommend, not recommend, so yay, nay, or abstain. I think no matter what amount of money has been put in the budget, we all want to make sure that those departments and organizations get that money. So voting against something is probably not in anybody's best interest. However, how do we get discussion going at the town meeting? My proposal is, if we had an affirmative vote of 1, no nays, and everybody else abstained, or the majority of people abstained on occasional warrants, it certainly would generate questions at town meeting, where additional information then could be brought before the town. So I only offer that as a consideration. I've seen town meetings where Budget Finance Committee, I've never seen them say not recommended across the board in my few years here in Raymond. It's usually, I agree, we move on. Occasional, maybe one negative vote. So I'm just asking you to consider perhaps a different way to accomplish the same end result. It goes to the town meeting as recommended, but might generate some questions. I'd just like to open that up for conversation. First of all, on my theory, because that's all it is, it's a theory. Again, I have no idea how most of you will vote on any of these. We've not, tonight's that discussion. So I just throw it out there, because I don't know how people feel about that type of exchange with residents. Again, even in a situation where, say the select board came up with an incremental warrant and added that, it could be voted down. I mean, nothing's guaranteed when you go to the voters, right? But I'm searching for a way to at least raise some of the issues. And maybe we can't do it. We don't want to do it. And that's a longer term view, an issue that needs to be worked on by more residents within the town. That's all.
And
So
we
I
are
just-
slated to meet, we are on the select board slate. I don't have that date in front of me to discuss our requests for,
Oh, yes.
so I
Our
sent that
legal
information
request.
out last evening, I believe, and I can send
Yeah.
that out again.
Instead of the common approach, which is we get an answer to our question via the town manager, we're going to have a select board meeting about our request to get a review of the warrant process, which is a whole new experience here. So I put that on the table. I don't know if there's any discussion or anybody even wants to get involved in it. Yes, sir.
I have Brian first, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just, first of all, We probably agree, and I didn't come up with the numbers, but 99.5% of the budget. I think, I don't know, we haven't voted yet, but I'm gonna guess, just from discussions and the like, we're in alignment on. So this is a very few things that we're probably out of alignment. Part of what I understand the Budget Finance Committee to be is a check and balance and a second set of eyes and ears and perspective. To me, the thing that's interesting is the tenor of those places where we seem to have some differences of opinion, that it's been described as hot button issues and personal and some of those things. And I don't think they are. I think that we have a difference of opinion. And I think actually communities thrive on having varied opinions and having discussions about it. So I'm all in favor of making sure that the townspeople who may not be as engaged as we all are in the day-to-day have an opportunity to understand some of the discussions. And then this year, there won't be any ability to do anything about increasing an amount if they wanted to, because they're closed warrants. But in the future, I think it would be helpful. And I do think it's probably valuable for a small amount of the cost of really getting a legal opinion, because at least to the best of my knowledge now, having done the research, if I look back at the notes that we just approved from our last meeting with the select board, is that there were some inaccurate statements made by some select board members about what's legal and not. And so therefore, I think it's probably valuable to get that, clarification on it. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Brian. Mary?
I think Brian covered it.
Dan?
I just want to let the people out there know that we are elected officials. We are a committee. We don't meet unless we have a quorum. And for another elected board to tell one other board that's also elected what and what not to do, I can't see why we can't make a presentation of different amounts on the spending and keep it closed. I totally agree with what Sheila did and said, but and I pretty much stayed out of it. But it's, to me, I'm going to be right up front. I'm going to vote not to recommend from Article 8 to number 42 tonight. That is mine, and I'm going to explain myself at town meeting in an open forum where our chairman of the select board wants it to happen. So that's what I'm doing tonight, and I'm being open with you folks. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Excuse me.
Diane?
Will Dana have the right to be able to explain at town meeting?
It's a town meeting.
But as a board member, or will you have to get up as a...
I'm a citizen of the town of Raymond.
But is that opportunity granted for every warrant?
I would hope so.
The only place I've seen it specifically prohibited is by members of the select board, that they cannot get up as a resident because it's their warrant. It's not our warrant, it's a select board's warrant. So I think our presence at town meeting is to answer questions if asked. I don't.
If asked.
If asked. That's why I was talking about this.
And I agree with a lot of the articles that I would pass them, but
Yep.
if we don't have a say as this committee, as a board, all members in this board, if we don't have a say, if we want to add a little bit here and there or subtract, we can always subtract.
Yeah.
But we can't add.
Right.
So we are a committee, and I want to make sure that this board stays whole, and we're dwindling in numbers. Nobody wants to do this job anymore, but that's how I feel. So it's just we have to fight for our rights, and that's what I'm going to do.
So I believe, Diane, that we do have that ability. The question becomes the moderator and how they're going to handle things. So I don't know exactly what to do about that. If you look at all of the publish guidance on this, that's one thing, and it should be perfectly allowable. There's no statute that prohibits it, but yet again, I guess that doesn't seem to be part of everything that we look at. So I don't know if that can be clarified prior to the meeting. You know, why are we sitting up there? What's the purpose of that? I guess just to answer a question, but
I just think it's not gonna happen. I just don't see us
That the
being able
town
to
would-
speak, right?
okay. What do you think, Bob?
They can't stop us from talking
Yeah.
at a meeting. No, just can't happen.
Don, you have any guidance? You have any guidance for us? I've been trying to stay out of it.
Well, we can't get legal opinions, so, and the selectmen
I have
don't want to get
perspective, but it's
involved
been-
in it, so.
I guess the Board of Selectmen has decided to have this be an agenda item, so that's where it should, in terms of the
The
open.
legal
versus
thing,
closed.
but how about the moderator and allowing us to speak?
Well, I think that generally speaking, you know, you're able to express your opinions at town meeting, as Dana's indicated. You know, but there are some, you know, instances when it has to pertain, of course, to the article that's being under discussion, and so there are
Right.
some, you know, issues with respect to parliamentary procedure that need to be adhered to, and the moderator has broad latitude to, you know, to allow or disallow speech, and depending on if it is pertinent and related and so forth. But generally speaking, if it's related to the article, I think it's, and you're a citizen, it's permissible.
I don't see any reason, Dana, that you can't literally stand up from your seat and go to the podium.
I don't have a problem with that.
Right.
And Sheila, the moderator is elected by the people at town meeting, not by the selectmen or the budget committee.
That's true.
They're voted in, so it all depends on who you want as moderator, you know?
I think that's usually pretty well decided before we get there. too.
Yes, it is.
Well said.
It is, but, you know, we can vote it down too.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. I'm done speechifying.
Yes, Sue, please.
In the ordinance for Budget Finance Committee, how the Budget Finance Committee is formed and your rules, there is in there in section 6, letter E rather, official motions will pass only on a majority of votes of all voting members of the Budget Finance Committee, unless the Budget Finance Committee unanimously votes to adopt other rules at the first meeting of the year after the annual meeting, and agrees to utilize the revised voting procedure for the full year. I went back and looked at the first minutes from last year, and that wasn't voted to be waived. So it was mentioned to have one person vote for, everyone else abstain. That means it fails.
That's great clarification, thank you.
Thank you.
How do you get a motion in a second but only get one to approve the vote?
You can't.
I know.
You have to have the quorum.
So you have to.
Has to be positive.
So we would need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So how many
Need 5.
votes do?
You would need 5 to pass, 4 is a fail.
Okay. So my strategy wasn't well thought out in accordance with an actual ordinance.
And with Robert's Rules of Order.
Robert's rules right here.
Are we ready to start?
Yes.
All right,
Thank
we'll
you,
start. First 7 articles are both electing moderator and land use ordinances, in which we do not make recommendations on. So the first article we will review is Article 8. I will read through the entire article. I will read the select board's recommendation and ask for the recommendation or not recommendation of the article from the Budget Finance Committee.
Mr. Chair, just a quick question. I'm looking at the document from February 12th, which was the original warrant communication.
couldn't
Do
tell
you have
you.
the newer one?
This is on the podium.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because
And
If you don't have the
slipped in
current,
a new one.
Mr. Chair, can I have
Yes.
one other question? Last year, it was requested of me to record not just the whether it passed or not, but how many votes. Do you want me to continue with that?
yes, please.
Okay.
And for those that, can we have a count of those that recuse themselves from vote for
Yes.
each of those articles as well, and they do not count into the majority vote.
They don't count at all.
Right.
It's a no vote.
You guys have the latest?
So on those votes, does it have to be 5? On,
Yes. It would have to
Even
be
though-
5 to pass.
okay.
We have to change that next time.
Well, we tried last.
Pardon? If, yeah.
Article 8. To see if the town will vote to authorize the select board on behalf of the town to sell and dispose of any property acquired by the town for non-payment of taxes pursuant to the policy adopted by the select board, as may be amended from time to time, the policy to remain consistent with the state statutes and laws. In all cases, conveyance to be made by municipal quitclaim deed. The select board recommends Article 8. The Budget Finance Committee recommends or does not recommend Article 8.
Make a motion to recommend Article 8.
Second?
I have a first and a second. Any discussion on Article 8? Seeing that, all those that recommend, support the motion to recommend. Any opposed? One opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Article 9, to see what date taxes will be due and to set an interest rate for unpaid amounts. The Select Board recommends first half to be due October 31st, 2019, and second half to be due April 30th, 2020, with the interest at 9% on any unpaid balances. The Select Board recommends Article 9. The Budget Finance Committee makes their recommendations.
So moved.
Barry?
Second.
With the motion. Diana with the second. Any discussion?
Yeah, again, this did not come up in any of our other discussions, but this is a 1% increase in interest on the unpaid balances. And again, I just, in my heart, think that somebody who's in this is on a bad road. And 9% for a town seems a little exorbitant to me.
I know previously we were following state guidelines of
Okay.
the 8%. Has the
And
state
they-
guidelines changed or?
Yeah, they did, they went to 9.
Okay.
Okay.
Usually, the guidelines say, what it says is, this is the maximum you can charge on unpaid taxes.
So we charge the maximum?
Yeah.
And we
Most-
also
most
pay the
towns
maximum
do.
on abated taxes.
Most towns do.
Most towns do.
Well, most
That-
towns do a lot of
You-
things.
If you, from experience, if you set this rate too low, you know, and some towns have done that, then
People
people
don't
will
pay.
game the system and use it. If they can invest their monies at a higher rate, they will. I mean, maybe that's not possible these days, but in the old days, that was the game.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of Article 9 making recommendations? Any opposed? Article 9 passes. Article 10, to see if the town will vote to set the interest rate to be paid by the town on abated taxes at 9% for the fiscal year. The Select Board recommends Article 10. The Budget Finance Committee makes their recommendation.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of recommending Article 10? Any opposed? Motion carries. Article 11, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of, we need a correction there in that article. I think it's just supposed to be Select Board, is that correct?
Yes.
It is on
What
mine.
is
Oh,
select
Board of
board?
Select Board, oh, that's pretty cool. That's what global replace will be.
Yeah.
I will reread. Article 11, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Select Board to dispose of town-owned personal property with value not to exceed $35,000. The Select Board recommends Article 11. The Budget Finance Committee makes their recommendation.
Make a motion to recommend Article 11.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I guess this is just a question, but what happens if the value is over 35,000?
Then I would have to go to a public meeting.
Town meeting.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve Article 11. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Article 12, to see if the town will vote to authorize the select board to appropriate from undesignated fund balance or surplus to meet the unanticipated needs of the community that occurred during the fiscal year, and/or to adjust the tax rate as the select board deemed advisable at an amount not to exceed $75,000. The select board recommends Article 12. The Budget Finance Committee will make their recommendation.
Motion to approve Article 12.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Now, this one to me, I object to, because again, what we're doing is we're saying we have extra money, and rather than using that money to reduce the budget increase, we're gonna use it at our discretion throughout the year, however we want. Again, I feel that money should be applied to the current budget and not just kind of used. To me, it's like a savings account or extra cash. So I understand the intent, but do not support the motion.
And what happens if we have some type of hurricane or some type of disaster and we need to appropriate $50,000 to say rebuild some communication thing at the fire department or somewhere here in town, and we don't have that capability of doing that?
We can also look at undesignated funds in 3 other places that are also, in my opinion, discretionary. That's one way to do it. The other way is to properly budget and allocate for disaster relief and put those funds aside in a public manner.
So we take $75,000 and put it away and do the same thing?
No, I would ask that when
But
the,
on
I'm
this
sorry, sir.
particular case, what we would do that is we give the selectmen the opportunity to make that decision. You just want to take $75,000 that would be tax dollars, raised by tax dollars, and put it aside.
No, that's
This
what
gives
they're
you-
doing.
This gives you, the selectmen, the opportunity to do that.
Right, they're taking excess tax dollars that were not spent and setting them aside. Correct.
Right.
I don't
But what
disagree
you're
with the
interested-
intent.
What you're interested in doing is raising the tax rate to cover $75,000 is what you're telling me.
Well, let's hope it doesn't happen.
Brian?
Just 2 comments on this since we've opened this discussion. Number one is, the fund balance is an important part of how fiscal authorities look at our worthiness for credit. So this is one where I think to have the flexibility that Perry's pointed out that the select board has is really important. I think they've shown in the past generally to be very good stewards of the money and not to be spending it in a casual way. So I'm in favor of the article.
Any other discussion? Seeing
What if
none.
they don't
Okay.
spend the 75,000? What happens to it?
It stays in the
Undesignated funds balance.
Stay in the undesignated fund.
Over the years, when the fund balance has gotten high enough that it goes beyond what we need in order to be seen as appropriate, the financial folks have always indicated that can be something that can then be utilized, and it's been brought down from time to time.
Brian, I was a selectman for 9 years, so you don't have to remind me.
Well, I wasn't specifically aiming at you, Dean. That was more just. a
I
general-
realize that.
And did you have that opportunity to do that then?
And I
Okay.
disagree because it was started at 50,000 and it's, if they use it, fine. If they don't, then it should be returned the next year into the budget. That's, if they don't use it, that's.
Don?
I just wanted to point out that it's a rare and extraordinary event that any money at all is used. There have been, lately a little bit more, utilization, but in my experience, several years went by where, nothing was utilized. They're very careful about that, very prudent in that stewardship, and so it would be a very rare occurrence where we'd use it. by the nature of the article, unanticipated, you know, most things are anticipated.
Kevin?
Another elementary question here. If it's not used, does it roll over into the next budget year?
You'll see 2 warrants that are coming up where they're doing exactly that.
Yep.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second on Article 12. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 12? Any opposed? Motion carries. Article 13, to see if the town will authorize the Select Board for the fiscal year 2019-2020 to transfer funds between appropriation accounts as long as the grand total of all appropriations is not exceeded. Any such transfers to be approved only at a properly called public meeting of the Select Board. The Select Board recommends Article 13. Budget Finance Committee will make their recommendation.
So moved?
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, and to me, this is exactly how the prior article should be worded. In other words, yes, we can give you discretion, but let's please discuss it at a public meeting.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 13? Any opposed? Motion carries. To see if the town will vote to authorize the use of town employees and/or town-owned equipment or independent contractors hired by the town for maintenance on private roads and special in certain circumstances where in the public's interest. Note of explanation. 3 examples of when the use of town employees and equipment may be necessary. A, tying in work done on a public road that intersects with a private road. B, plowing snow on a private road to clear the way for emergency response apparatus. And C, in a rare or emergency situations, maintaining private roads for school bus access to special education students as deemed necessary. The Select Board recommends Article 14. The Budget Finance Committee will make their recommendation.
Make a motion to approve Article 14.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, just a question, kind of one of those elementary type questions is, in this particular article, we provide a note of explanation, which is pretty unusual. Usually we don't explain nothing to nobody. Why in this one rather than in others? Like, for example, like talking about under $75,000, Bob, if we talked about in IE, for example, in the event of a hurricane that destroyed a tower or this, that, or the other thing, to give people a better understanding of what it's for.
Yeah, but what happens when you, during our course of conversation, you have 3 things here that are listed,
Right.
okay? And I kind of operate under the philosophy, if you list it here and somebody's gonna complain about it if you use it for something else. But I've been around situations where something happens that's not listed there and somebody is always complaining that it wasn't originally listed in the first 3 topics on that article. So they're against it. They want us to tell them everything.
These are
But
So why-
examples
if
of
we-
Well,
of using
I get
employees and
that,
equipment.
but so we do it in one and not in the other, so I just find it curious that we say discretion and open it up for complaints in one and not in the other. Just-
Well, that's what I'm saying. Somebody, if you approve that with those 3 items there, and that somebody complains that the highway department plowed a road for some other reason,
Which they
then
will.
somebody's gonna complain.
Brian,
I was
please.
just going to say this, I believe, goes back to the history, and Don will probably chuckle at this too. A town meeting where this one without the explanation came up, and after about a 40-minute discussion, I think the Director of Public Works was asked, well, how often does this happen? And he said, I don't think we've ever used it. And that kind of thing got it to a vote. And so I think what happened was that was probably augmented. Don, am I remembering history?
I remember that discussion, but what differentiates this from some of the other articles is the other articles are to benefit the town directly. People understand the money article. When you start talking about putting public equipment onto private property for private purposes, that is something that people take notice of. And so I will tell you that this has happened and I won't give all the details of how it worked out, but we went down a very icy road to clear an icy road for a special education student. So I believe that's happened one time in my almost 20 years next year. So it's, once again, very rare. And I can't think of another circumstance but these three, to follow up on Barry's point. You know, if something were outside these three, I think that would stick out and people might ask a question, but
Okay,
even these three would be very rare.
thanks for the clarification.
I've
I'm just
also
curious.
seen the public works guys sand a private road for fire apparatus. It happened on the road I live on. The lady that lives up at the beginning of the road, they had a chimney fire, and it was wicked slippery. So they went in and sanded that portion of the road, and I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, that's a good point, but that's actually one that's not here. I guess it could be added, but that does happen from time to time to keep our people safe.
Okay, so again, then I appreciate that. So this has some history because of the nature of what's being done, and kind of forestalls a lot of discussion. I get
That one's probably better than any of these three in terms of, yeah,
Okay, thank you, I
I'll have
appreciate
to
that.
add that next year, Tom.
maybe, yeah.
That makes sense.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 14? Any opposed? Motion carries. To see if the town, Article 15, to see if the town will vote to authorize a tax collector or treasurer to accept prepayments of taxes not yet committed pursuant to 36 MRSA subsection 506 with no interest. The Select Board recommends Article 15, and the Budget Finance Committee will make their recommendation.
Make a motion to approve Article 15, to recommend Article 15.
Second.
We have the first and second to recommend Article 15. Any discussion on Article 15? Go ahead, Sheila.
Just clarification, I think this one could get us into a little bit of trouble. The way it's stated, not yet, with no interest. And what you're saying is, we'll take your money in advance, but we're not going to pay you interest.
Correct.
I would just suggest that somehow be clarified a little bit, because it just dangles out there. And, first read I said, well, why would you pay me interest if I gave you money in advance? And why would you not let the tax collector take money in advance? It's kind of like a weirdo article. I understand it because it's the clarification of the interest, but I don't think it's very clear. Just my comment. Right? You read it and you go, what?
Some towns give discounts if you prepay or
Oh, I
early
believe it.
or early pay. I know because
Yeah.
I own property in
Yeah.
other towns that offer that service if
I'm
you
just
pay
saying it's
early.
not very clear why it would even be in there.
Any other discussion on Article 15? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 15? Any of those opposed? Motion carries. To see Article 16, to see if the town will vote to appropriate $249,497 from the tax increment of the Pipeline Route 302 Tax Increment Financing District for fiscal year 2019-2020 projects proposed in the Tax Increment Financing District Development Program. The Select Board recommends Article 16. The Budget Finance Committee will make their recommendation.
So moved.
Motion
Second?
and a second. Any discussion?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Sheila?
Again, tax increment financing has a pretty understood meaning in the business. And I just want to note for the record the town's liberal interpretation of the use of this account. The Hawthorne House, the RWPA, and the Historical Society funding is contained within this tax increment financing, being labeled as projects. I just would like that on the record. Go ahead, sir. Chair.
Yes, Don.
This particular tax increment financing district was established near the dawn of such instruments, and it was characterized as a soup to nuts sort of design. And since that time, they have been, more narrowly drawn, I think more restrictive. But in those days, the only thing that's not there is, and Scarborough got into trouble with this, years ago was, they built a town office with, well, got in trouble with their taxpayers, got in trouble with their citizens. That was accepted, I guess, from the law, but at the time this was drawn, it was permissible and usual and typical. It probably wouldn't be today.
Right.
And I think we're getting near the end of this particular,
It's a 30-year.
or was it a 30?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I believe we have 10-ish years
Okay.
left.
Yeah, but it's it's fairly typical for its time, but not so today, so, yeah.
Any other questions? Those in favor of Article 16, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Motion carries. Article 17, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $491,822 for the administration account. The Select Board recommends Article 17, and the Budget Finance Committee makes their recommendation.
So moved?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
may I ask how Mr. Oliver intended to vote, because he was,
Yeah, sorry, I was looking something up and I missed it. I was going to approve.
thank you.
Thank you.
Eagle eyes.
She can type and watch us at the same time.
Very quiet over here.
Article 18, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $26,675 for the employee compensation and training account. The Select Board recommends Article 18. The Budget Finance Committee will make their recommendation.
So moved.
Seconded.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Brian?
I just want to make a comment. I think this seems to be working well. I hope that the town manager agrees that it seems to be the approach that was taken was pretty progressive for a town to look at how they compensate, and especially for performance. And the way this is working is exactly the way I think it was envisioned, of kind of replenishing this fund on an annual basis. And I think it's working well, and I hope the town's
Yeah, it's
enjoying
been
it.
a bit of a learning experience, and it's taken us some time, to get our stride with it. But I would say that, we're happy with it. It's working well, and it's still pretty unique. Nobody's beating down our door saying we'd like to do that, but it's sort of a one-off program, and I think it's working well.
Here to be commended.
I will be recusing myself from this vote. I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of Article 18? Any opposed? Motion carries. Article 19, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $59,051 for the assessing account. The Select Board recommends Article 19. The Budget Finance Committee will make their recommendations.
Make a motion to recommend Article 19.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 19? Any opposed? Motion carries. Article 20, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $94,886 for the Code Enforcement Department account. The Select Board recommends Article 20. The Budget Finance Committee will make their recommendation.
So moved?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 20? Any opposed? Motion carries. Article 21, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $32,800 for the town buildings account. The Select Board recommends Article 21. The Budget Finance Committee will make their recommendation.
So moved?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 21? Any opposed? Motion carries. Article 22, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $174,765 for the Technology Department account. The Select Board recommends Article 22. The Budget Finance Committee will make their recommendation.
Motion to approve Article 22?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on technology? Go ahead, Julie.
I'd just like to compliment the town for the work they're doing in this regard. For a town of our size, it's pretty amazing what we're doing with technology here. I know day-to-day stuff can still aggravate the crap out of most people, but the fact that we're broadcasting all of our meetings, there are video archives, we have a new town video series to educate the public. What we've been doing with our own network and plans for the future is to be commended.
Thank you, Sheila. Any other discussion? All those in favor of Article 22? Any opposed? Motion carries. Article 23, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $1,000 for the Community Development Account. The Select Board recommends Article 23. The Budget Finance Committee will make their recommendation.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Go ahead, Sheila.
Again, I'd like to note for the record that this is the RTP bus buried under something called Community Development Account. By this vote, the Select Board has indicated that the types of people who ride this current public transportation are not a good return on investment for the town of Raymond, for them to support. That means people who are going to work, people who need to get to medical appointments are not those that we wish to support. The Board of Selectmen would rather volunteers solved how to get people to that public transportation. Note that the lack of support for this only linked to public transportation may mean that it would not exist in the future. And point you to today's headline in the Portland Press Herald, where the Metro Shuttle's success, in other words, this is another experimental program that has been an outrageous success. Federal funding is about to run out, and they need towns need to fully support and pay for if this bus is to continue to exist. So again, I just make the point that we seem not to want to support public transportation for the current ridership, but we wish to solve a different problem with here within Raymond. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Kevin?
Yeah, if, we were to not support this, would that mean that the community development account would get zero funding?
No.
Yes.
It's all decided at town meeting.
It would be decided at
Brian,
town meeting.
It's just,
And it would raise a discussion.
that's why I'm voting no on everything, because I know at town meeting it's gonna be chipped. My vote won't matter anyway, so.
Okay.
Right?
So if members of the Budget Finance Committee thought that this account deserved more than $1,000.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's why I'm voting no on everything.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Well, just on that point, though, if we were to not vote in favor of this, then you'd have that mixed discussion, and it's possible that people would take that as a cue that there shouldn't be support of the bus. They can't raise the amount because it's a closed warrant.
So you must accept the 1,000 for this
Correct.
budget year
Exactly.
or nothing.
Right.
But if it shows the Budget Finance Committee doesn't approve it, it could spark discussion.
Correct.
That's a good point. Or
Which
we
I
could
think
do
is what we
something
want.
to the point of passing it, but having a split vote on it.
Yeah, I don't know if that's gonna really catch people's eyes.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Does that go on that doesn't go on the warrant?
It is on the warrant, and I believe the moderator does generally read the Select Board recommendation and the Budget Finance
Correct.
Committee recommendation.
So technically, if we did not recommend and unanimously voted against it, or the majority voted against it, it might spark a question at town meeting,
I really think that's the only way we're gonna get.
a discussion.
It's too bad too, because I do support the account, but I don't support the amount that's, suggested.
Has anybody on this board ridden that bus?
Yes.
I have.
Is that the bus they were talking about?
The
that
Express,
picks up at
yeah, the
Yes,
Lake
it's
Region.
Sunset
Variety?
Yeah.
It's called the Lake Region
Okay,
Explorer.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little
Explorer.
bus, not a big bus, a little bus.
No. And I made a comment at, not last meeting, but the prior one, about people getting their Suboxone treatment and I wasn't making it as a snide remark or anything, it's the truth. People can't, they don't have a driver's license, and most of these, they were kids, 23, 24 years old, and they were on this bus. It's a small bus, so you hear people talking. I disagree with the method they're treating these people with, and I made that comment, but some people need that bus to get their treatment, and that's the only way they can get it.
And the town of Raymond is one of the few communities that's not supporting it to close to the amount that's being asked of each town, which is, again, prorated. And the two main objections that the select board has is the stop itself. I think they believe if we moved it somewhere else, more people could get to it. I'm not so sure about that. And then the other one is, why should people in Raymond pay the same $3 as the people in Bridgeton? If you did a budget analysis of what it would cost RTP to implement a varied fare on the route, it's going to be more expensive to collect those fares, account for those fares, you know, so you pay 3, you pay 2, you pay 1. I mean, it gets more complicated, more expensive to administer. Again, it's $3, and seniors get on there for $2. Also, if you get on the bus anywhere out here, you can ask for a transfer. It's totally free. It's part of that $3. And you can get anywhere in Portland. You can get all the way out to the airport. You can get to the main mall, you know. But that 302 bus is the only way you can get there. There's no other public transportation. And again, this bus is kind of an experiment. If it doesn't get support by both ridership and towns, when the funding dries up, it will go away. And so Raymond may be wanting to solve what is referred to here in the state as the last mile problem, which is getting particularly seniors to that public transportation. We may solve that, but there may be no public transportation to get them to. So again, I just make that point. So again, you know, we have to decide how we want to vote on this one. I really do like Diane's concept, and we'll be voting no.
Are there any other discussion? Yeah, Brian.
2 quick points. First of all, I ride the bus probably 15 times a year. The group of people that are on that bus are very varied. It goes from people like Dana was talking about. There's obviously, there are clearly people that are having their challenges. Many of them are going to get medical care in Portland. I spoke with a gentleman not too long ago who retired and moved to Wyndham because he now had an ability to get back into town to see his family, but could afford housing out in Wyndham, where it's become much more expensive in Portland. I've talked to kids who are going and commuting into private school, like the Catholic school that's Chevres, from out this way. So it's a really interesting, and it's a varied group. It's not generally full, but I think the ridership is increasing. I think they could be doing more to listen to the town. They don't seem to be very responsive to some of the things and questions and invitations that the town has put forth, and I think they could be doing more on their part to make things helpful. I will say the last comment I want to make is that the RTP bus that comes out, the Lakes Region Explorer, is one of many different tentacles that are moving out from the population zone of Portland. And as Portland is getting larger and larger, and there's more companies there, I think there will be more of a need for the connection, if we want a connection to Portland, and creating something where there's public transport is one way to do that. I think it could actually be economically beneficial ultimately to the town. But again, you know, it is public transport. It's hard to justify to get to the cost without some kind of public funds. But I do think that it plays an important part of how Raymond stays connected to the larger area. Those are my comments.
Any other discussion?
Bob,
Yeah, Diane.
if someone could remember, I don't remember, what else is under this account?
That's it.
That's it.
There were
So they
some
would
other
get the full
things.
$1,000.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? I want to remind members of the motion on the floor is to recommend $1,000 for the community development account. All those in favor of that motion, please raise your hand. Any of those object to that motion? Any opposed, any
I'll
abstaining? You're abstaining. So the motion does not carry. So we don't need to rescind the motion, we just need a new motion on the floor. Is that correct?
No, we're done.
You're done. You have
That's all we
voted
get to
not to
do.
recommend.
We
Oh, well,
recommend.
no, our motion was to recommend, and that motion failed. Now we have to motion to not recommend, because we haven't resolved that yet.
That's true.
Oh.
I'll make a motion not to recommend Article 23.
I have a motion not to recommend,
Second.
and I have a second. Any discussion on that motion?
I hope this will work so we can have a dialogue about it.
Well, you know,
Won't
Mark,
change this year.
well, it doesn't really change anything, but it's worth a
It won't
shot.
change this yet. It will open the conversation. All those in favor of not recommending Article 23? All those opposed of not recommending? Any abstentions? The motion carries to not recommend.
What was the final score on that one?
602.
All right, we see how that works. Article 24. I will be recusing myself from this vote since I am a member of the Fire Rescue Department. Article 24, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $809,774 for the Fire Rescue Department account. The Select Board recommends Article 24. The Budget Finance Committee will make their recommendation.
So moved?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of recommending? Any opposed? The motion carries. Article 25, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $32,312 for the animal control account. The Select Board recommends Article 25. The Budget Finance Committee will make their recommendation.
Motion to approve Article 25.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Go ahead, Brian.
So, this has been a hot button of mine over the years, so forgive me, but the increase is 68% versus a year ago. In 2016, we spent $13,954, so in 4 years, it's a 131% increase. And I don't know of a better solution, and if I had one, I would suggest it. We're making a pretty dramatic change of going from utilizing the shelter on a cost per person in town to having and sharing someone. It's a fairly rich a compensation package that's being
Yeah.
utilized. I understand the reasons why. And again, I wanted to make note of this, that I hope that this kind of dramatic increase in animal control, given the number of animals that are actually, managed through this, that we can look for ways to try to keep this contained, if not reduced. Thank you.
Any other comments on animal control? Go ahead, Don.
Well, that's a strategy that we've followed for decades, is the idea of finding somebody who is willing to do the job and do it well and be on 24/7, 365 call for nothing. And we haven't been very successful as a group of towns in finding and retaining that person. So here now we have a person who's been with us for a number of years, doing a great job. The three towns together said, perhaps the time has come that we should approach this in a more responsible and professional manner. And so that's cost money. I don't expect that we're going to see this exponentially increase in the future. But this is not a job that anyone wants. Trust me, we've advertised for it. When you do get somebody, you hope you get somebody who does it for all the right reasons. Oftentimes, towns end up with zealots of various types, and it doesn't really end well. So anyway, I could go on and on about it, but we have a good person who's been very dedicated. Call it, a reward for a job well done. Call it moving into a more professional service. Call it a big budget increase, perhaps. But the other towns are all in. They feel that this is in their elected bodies, budget finance committees, boards of selectmen. believe this is the way to go. I'm hopeful that we'll have the support here. As I said, I don't see it changing greatly. You know, it's going to be an incremental change from here, but it's an evolution. It's certainly more money, and I've heard the arguments, well, we should have done this or something else, and you know, I understand that too, but that's an apples and oranges sort of an argument. She does valuable work protecting the welfare of animals, and most places that's a professional job. She's very well trained. She goes to ongoing training. She has the equipment to keep herself from being injured and to help the public from, you know, being injured. The Sheriff's Department doesn't respond to these calls or doesn't want to respond to these calls. They will back her up and assist her if it's particularly dangerous. But it's a reality of life that needs to be dealt with. She's dealing with it well, and I think that this is the way to go.
Good, Sheila.
Daniel had his hand up first.
Is Naples and Casco chipping in $32,312?
It's an equal share, yeah.
So we're looking at almost $100,000 position for an animal control.
Well, you're talking about the cost of insurance, you're talking about the vehicle, you're talking about
Well,
the
I
salary, you're
realize
talking
that, but
about
it's
all
a
the
used
equipment.
vehicle.
It's a used
What's
vehicle.
gonna be her salary?
Do you have a salary? I don't have it with me.
It's just $14 an hour.
$14 an hour.
And what's the benefits package, though?
Well, that's where the benefits package is Casco's benefit package, which is a very rich benefits package compared to the other towns.
Yeah, well, that's why we don't work well with other towns, I guess. Jeez.
Well,
Any
as
other discussion?
I have one.
Yes, Sheila.
Again, I have no opinion on this particular warrant, but I would just like to say that I think the concept of sharing staff amongst towns is one that Raymond's going to continue to run into, and I think as a Budget Finance Committee, we need to be open to some of these conversations. No town wants to support or can't afford to support at what it will cost to do many jobs. Things that we don't do at all today, for example, like having an actual rec department staff person. Things like a community services officer, those kinds of things. I think that particularly for towns like Raymond and others throughout Maine, this is becoming a new model, shared services. I know maybe it hasn't worked out so well with the school district in the opinion of some, but I think it's a model that we should continue to look at, to provide professional services to citizens in our town. What that future will be, I'm not quite sure, but they're using this model for other things in other towns, and it's been working out, you know, not without its bumps, but I think it has merit in terms of how to get a particular service at a professional level for a reduced cost.
This also includes funding, of course, for a backup, whereas before we were more or less reliant on one person who was willing to do this on a continuous basis without a break. Very few people are willing to do that, you know. And so there's a backup, you know, hours in there for someone, so that somebody could have a vacation, could have a day or two off. I mean, I'm open. If we've got applicants, I'm ready to take them for this job. If somebody wants this job, let me know.
I have no ideas.
And I mean, trust me, because I get the calls, I've gotten them at home. I've even made a call one time. You know, when you have an animal in crisis, you have a problem. I mean, people expect there to be a response. This is not, and I think maybe Barry could speak to this, you know, it's not going to be a high priority for law enforcement. You know, so it comes down to, do you have an ACO? The law enforcement, as in the Sheriff's Department, they do a great job trying to assist her to the degree possible, but they have many, many more important things that they're dealing with. They have their own crises, you know, human crises. They have a range of things they're dealing with, and dealing with animal issues are not in that range.
Yeah.
Speaking on this, for a person that was responsible for an animal control person and budgeting for it, if you can get one 24/7, 365 for $32,000, you better take them and keep them. Because like the town manager said, 24/7, 365, night, day, 24/7. The animal controls at the wee hours of the morning, and you're not going to tie your law enforcement personnel up at critical times of the day or what have you to handle an animal complaint. And then you have animals in crisis and they want somebody there faster than the ambulance gets there.
Yeah.
So if you can get somebody to do that 24/7 for that amount of money, I say grab them and keep them and you're good to go.
Just a
Kevin?
quick question, whereas we're sharing this employee amongst the 3 towns, as I understand it, are we going to track the calls per town so that
Yes.
with time we understand?
That's a great question, and how we ended up with the, equal share is that it can vary, you have peaks and valleys.
Sure.
Sometimes, well, there was a big cat hoarding incident in Casco at one point, so they had a lot of calls that particular year. We had the particular problem of poultry problem, a fowl problem in Raymond at one point, so we had a spike in calls. Naples has had times when they have more calls. They have the Blues Festival where they see, hundreds of animals that people bring into that, and believe it or not, this is, you should know this is a town with a lot of dogs. The other towns have a lot of dogs. There are a lot of animals in these towns, many registered, a lot unregistered, so that's another thing that's being worked on is trying with our town clerk and the other town clerks to make sure that we have these animals properly accounted for and registered. But yeah, so we're tracking it and we could adjust it as necessary, but it's pretty equal actually.
Appreciate that. That was kind of my thought was, it's gonna take a bit of a sample size before we understand and knowing that things change year to year, but if we're roughly within 10% of each other or something, then yeah, let's keep it evenly divided, but if
A
year
lot of
after
times,
year it's 80% in one town, then maybe we can relook at how it's
yeah,
split.
a lot of times in municipal formulas, you'll look at, actual use, which is what we're saying here. But another way to look at it would be population valuation, we lose.
Yeah,
This is the best formula for Raymond.
Sure.
the rich should pay more.
The motion on the floor is to recommend the animal control account. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. Article 26, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $771,633 for the Public Works account. The Select Board recommends Article 26, and the Budget Finance Committee will make their recommendation.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Go ahead, Sheila.
I can't believe they do it for this, that's all I'm saying.
Well, they don't do it for this because there's also a huge
I know.
CIP
The
piece.
secret account, the CIP.
No, it's not a secret account.
That's continuous improvement. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Article 27, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $338,458 for the solid waste account. The Select Board recommends Article 27. The Budget Finance Committee will make their recommendation.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of Article 27? Any opposed? Motion carries. Article 28, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $35,643 for the cemeteries account. The Select Board recommends Article 28. The Budget Finance Committee will make their recommendation.
Motion to approve Article 28?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
How many cemeteries are there in town?
7.
No other discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. To see, Article 29, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $17,700 for the Parks and Recreation account. The Select Board recommends Article 29. The Budget Finance Committee will make their recommendation.
Motion to approve Article 29?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of Article 29? Any opposed? Motion carries. Article 30. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $60,000 for the Raymond Village Library. The Select Board recommends Article 30, and the Budget Finance Committee will make their recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, I need to recuse on this warrant article.
Motion to approve Article 30.
Second.
Any discussion? Yes, please.
Can't vote, but I can discuss. Again, the idea that the library should spend its reserves and come to the town for capital projects or the, as quote, funding source of last resort, end quote, is contrary to any known sound fiscal management policy. This decision will leave the library in a very nice deficit condition. A review of our balance sheet shows that the $77,000 affectionately called savings or cash by the Board of Selectmen are designated or restricted funds. Let's use restricted instead of designated. These funds come from directed donations or grants that have specific requirements for spending. They cannot be reallocated at library board discretion, such as the town is able to do. The statement that if town residents supported the library, that they would donate more is also one I would just like to comment on. I would ask everyone to remember that the library serves all. It does not just serve those in a position to make charitable donations. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Go ahead, Brian.
I think there's a number of things that are pressing the library right now, one of which is the increasing minimum wage, which I'm still actually amazed at the staff that the library has. The amount of value that they add is pretty phenomenal. A big part of what the increase that was proposed, the kind of option A, option B, was to increase the number of hours of availability, increasing people, which could then increasing their hours, which then would allow the library to be open for a longer period of time. So I was disappointed that that the Select Board didn't at least go part way on that, if not the whole way. I think, as I mentioned in our discussion with the Select Board, if you look at any other of the other towns and kind of just work out a per capita cost, we're at the, even if we'd gone to 70,300, I think it was, we would still be almost at the bottom of that list on a cost per capita basis. And given what the library does, I think it's an amazing value. So I'm torn on this one because I would like to see at least a discussion about it at the town meeting, and I'm not sure about the best way to go about doing that so that we create the inquisitiveness of having people at least have a dialogue about it. And frankly, if at the town meeting and we get a feedback that the library doesn't really matter that much, then that's good input for next year to understand where the town wants to go.
Any other comments, Kevin?
Yeah, just a comment. I've been in the town for like 7 years now, and I regret to admit that I wasn't really too aware of the library and what it had to offer. I knew that it was there, but I've got a 3.5-year-old and a 1-year-old, and since this was brought up, a few months ago, we have been going to the library, taking part in the children's activities, taking books out of the library. My kids love it. I understand where the Select Board is coming from, but I also am kind of echoing Brian, where I wish we may have met somewhere in the middle. So I also kind of stuck because I wish we could support the library with more, and if it comes right down to it, I'll look to privately see if we can do that, but
And your mailing addresses.
Don't volunteer for stuff like that, right?
I don't know, for the record, I think that it is doing a lot of great things, and I would like to see it be available more hours as well.
Anyone else?
Yep. I just want to chime in and say I agree that I wish we could have met a little bit differently on the funds, but yes, the library is one of the big reasons that it's a great program. My kids went through it, and a lot of kids went through it, and I see a lot of senior citizens going there now. people that I never really thought would go to the library, and I see these people going in there, and oh yeah, I go in there and get a book, and you know, a lot of people, I guess, get nothing to do when they get old and read more, I guess. So.
Big print there.
Yeah, I know. You know, maybe I don't know. I'd have to get the ones that read to me. You know, yeah, I'd get the on tape ones, but.
Any other discussion? I want to remind members that the motion on the floor is to recommend the $60,000 for the library. All those in favor of that, raise your hand. All those opposed? Any of those abstained? Actually, you're recusing yourself. So the motion is not carrying. So I'll need a new motion.
I'd like to make a motion to not recommend Article 30.
I have a
Second.
motion. I have a second. Any other discussion on that motion? Seeing none. All those in favor of not recommending the article, raise your hand. Any of those in favor? Any of those opposed? Any of those opposed?
Oppose the
Double
opposition?
no.
Motion carries. Do not recommend.
What was the final on that one?
That was 6 to 0 to 2.
Thank you.
Article 31, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $8,000 for the general assistance account. The select board recommends Article 31. The Budget Finance Committee will make their recommendation.
So moved?
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just have a question.
Yes.
If this is one of those unanticipated community needs, that we would actually need more than 8,000 in a given year, is this where you could kind of move things around a little bit to support this account?
Yes.
Thank you.
Secondly, it's matched by the state, so
Right.
it's actually 16. Correct?
Yes.
100%?
No, it's a 70.
70%, that's
That's
what
reimbursement.
Reimbursement, right?
So that goes a lot further than,
Yeah,
Oh,
it's a little more closer to 20.
any other discussion?
Why wouldn't we put more money in that then?
It's not being used. We've never emptied that account during any fiscal year.
The reason that we have a low level of general assistance is that we have a very great scarcity of affordable housing. And we have also the Community Assistance Fund, which we utilize to help people who are in need but don't qualify for general assistance. So we have resources, other resources, but this is an exceedingly low number, you should know.
yeah. Just as a point of fact, that one of the things that's coming up time and again, and for example, the community assessment we recently done, is the lack of communication and true understanding by people, a lot of people who live here, at what's even available to them in terms of Medicaid, general assistance, and there's a wide variety of other state programs that are out there, long-term in-home care assistance, there's a lot of stuff. And you know, I'm constantly amazed that people don't even know where to start. I know they call the town a lot, and Don will point them in the right direction when things unfortunately get to a crisis stage. So just that you know, communication is a big issue on whether and how a lot of these things get used.
Any other discussion on Article 31? All those in favor of recommending? Any opposed?
Oh, sorry, I recommended. I wasn't paying attention. I'm in the recommend.
Article 31 passes. Article 32, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $2,000 for the support of provider agencies at the discretion of the town manager to assist the citizens of Raymond. The Select Board recommends Article 32. The Budget Finance Committee will make their recommendation.
So moved?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Of course, me. Brian, you want to?
I was just going to say, this is a place where I would really like to commend the select board for what I think is a great solution to figuring out who are the best people that are helping our citizens and allowing the town manager, who has probably a better pulse on that than anyone, to do that. I'm hoping that maybe we will see that number go north in the future, but I think it's a great start, and I think it was a great solution on the part of the select board to come up with.
Any other discussion?
Again, you know, this is where, kind of in quiet ways, we were told, well, you can put SMA in there, you can put SMA in there. Again, I don't
What's
disagree.
SMA?
Southern Maine Area on Aging, that asked for $500. I don't disagree that this is a good first step, but I do find the approach, the avoidance of the serious issue of demonstrated need and actual services provided to our residents kind of disingenuous by the Select Board. Meals on Wheels alone provided 797 meals to our residents. The Southern Maine Area on Agency documented $18,000 worth of services to Raymond residents. We were somewhat facetiously told perhaps they could bill us back. The avoidance of these issues is only going to cost the town more in the long run, as residents will begin to turn to them constantly as a last resort. I handed you guys a map when you came in, just so that you are aware of how this works in the state of Maine. The suggestion that another agency be found to provide the services is laughable at best. It shows a demonstrated lack of knowledge on how services are provided here in the state of Maine. If you look at the map, you will see that the state is divided up into 5 regional areas. SMA is ours. Seniors Plus, which was referred to repeatedly, is in a different area of the state. To do a direct 990 comparison between any two of these agencies is totally incorrect. It would be like taking any two wood manufacturing companies, and comparing their 990s and making a definitive statement about the quality of their management based on their tax returns. I find that totally incorrect. As I said, this is how the state is divided. Federal and state funding flow to these agencies and flow through them. Raymond cannot find another agency to provide particularly Meals on Wheels, and as point of fact, SMA actually provides services from Meals on Wheels to Seniors Plus because they have been unable to fulfill the need in their own service area. We cannot find another agency to provide their services. Many of these services, other than private pay, these are the primary coordinators in our area of the state. So again, I just want to point this out. I don't disagree it's a good first step, but I do find that, in my opinion, we're avoiding the larger issue of the aging population in the town of Raymond, which will continue to get older, will continue to need more services. And SMA is the quality option in our region of the state. I think questioning their management based on comparison of 2 totally different staffing and funding models is disingenuous. Thank you.
Any other comments? Discussion? All those in favor of recommending Article 32? Any opposed? Motion carries. Article 33, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $572,661 for the insurance and employees' benefits account. The Select Board recommends Article 33. The Budget Finance Committee will make their recommendation.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second?
Any discussion?
I'll be abstaining.
I will be recusing as well. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of recommending Article 33? Any opposed? And we have 2 recused votes. Article 34, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $323,600 for debt services. Included are 2013 Public Works Road Construction Bond Payment of $224,000 and the 2015 bond payment, $99,600. The Select Board recommends Article 34. The Budget Finance Committee will make their recommendation.
Make a motion to recommend Article 34.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
we just do a great job of managing debt in this town. Maybe at times a little too good, but in terms of our overall debt ratio, it's extremely low, and it's one of the things that we've done a good job on.
No other discussion? All those in favor of recommending Article 34? Any opposed? Motion carries. Article 35, see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $785,000 for the capital improvement program. Included are Public Works Equipment Reserve, $215,000. Public Works Paving Road Reserve, $320,000. Municipal Facilities Improvements, $35,000. Technology, $105,000. Fire Department Equipment and Facilities, $75,000. And Playground Improvements, $35,000. The Select Board recommends Article 35. The Budget Finance Committee will make their recommendation.
Make a motion to recommend Article 35.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Sheila?
This is another one that if you go back and add numbers throughout the budget, we're supporting truly a reserve in some of these accounts. It's not allocated for full spending. Again, my question remains, why should we have a reserve or cash on hand if we're not using it to offset budget costs? I do understand the good fiduciary policy involved in that. But again, why aren't these numbers allocated within each individual department budget as appropriate? That's the only question that I have.
Because it's all got part of the capital improvement program. And
I
to see it all
understand.
under one umbrella, it's a lot clearer here than to have it muddled
True.
in each department's request.
True, but not all of this is actual spending for the fiscal year, correct?
True. I mean, the fire department's planning on
Right.
buying new equipment, so you're
Right.
building that account.
Okay, so, you know, what I'm saying is, on one hand, we are supporting reserves, which have no specific purpose, so we're actually supporting a savings account, is that correct?
It would appear that way.
For the future, which in some cases, the select board does not appreciate in other organizations, such as the Raymond Village Library, doing the same thing for its roof, but we want to do that for the town of Raymond. So again, I guess I support this, but I'm just saying that the contradictory analysis on how funds are managed in the town of Raymond versus support services and outside organizations, I find once again to be very, very different, and I would just like to point that out. Savings for future capital, we call them capital improvements. The library called it a capital asset account for when our roof fails. That's not a good thing, but this is a good thing. I just want to point that out. Thank you.
Right.
So this is one of the places where Board Member Bork and I have a difference of opinion. When you're buying things like $300,000, $400,000 fire trucks, you don't want to have a year where you suddenly have a fluctuation in what you have to raise on money because it's time to buy that particular vehicle. And the same thing would go with Public Works and there's technology as well. I think we do things in a pretty good way of being able to anticipate a need down the future and build that kitty so that we have the money that we need when it's time for the fire truck in this example that I'm giving needs to be purchased so that we don't have wild fluctuations in our
I
budget.
absolutely agree with Mr. Walker, but if you do the calculations to find what percentage of the budget this represents compared to things like a capital asset at the library of $33,000 to the percentage of budget, I don't think they're that far off. So again, I'm just saying for the public record that the standards of fiduciary management are being judged differently in different cases. That's all I'm saying. Our $33,000 is like a $200,000 fire truck to our budget.
Don, what's considered to be the appropriate amount, or Kathy, this is probably more for you, what's the appropriate funds to have kind of on hand that gives us that AAA rating?
The unappropriated surplus
Unappropriated,
right
yeah.
now is at 15, it exceeds 15%. Our policy is 15%. Basically, what they're looking for is the fact that you have a policy and that you adhere to it.
Okay. So it's about
And that it's
15%.
within
And that's
a
undesignated,
range that
that's
would
different.
be
Yeah.
recommended by your auditor,
Okay.
which
I'm
it
just
is.
curious what it is.
Okay, so
So
the-
it may be something to think about in terms of
Exactly.
the library
I know,
also.
we asked that question, what's the appropriate reserve to have, and we have not been able to get an answer to it, so that's helpful.
That might be helpful.
In terms of the CIP, there's been a long-standing discussion on whether or not we should be purchasing something with monies from, that are already paid forward, so people, residents at this time are paying for this
Right.
versus buying this and residents
In the future,
paying for it.
maybe, yeah.
And it all comes to whether or not you want to
Bond it or
or
capital improvement.
it's capital improvement account.
Right.
And it's, we've
Yeah,
gone both
sure.
ways. We've gone
Sure.
both ways.
Sure. No, I truly appreciate and believe that this is good fiduciary management. I absolutely agree with that. I'm just saying that, I would like us to apply that same lens to everything we do then, that's all.
Kevin?
If this is the wrong place to ask this question, just let me know, but I was curious about the $35,000 in playground improvements.
I'm looking forward to go see that playground too.
Is that the Mill Street
The
playground?
library, the playground.
Will you let everybody come over and play on it?
I guess if I should know this, I apologize, but what is included in that? Is it just a general?
Nathan told us what was going on. They have one play gym, and they're adding a second larger
They're
one.
doing a toddler
and-
one, and then they're doing an older kid one, and I think.
They're doing a walking trail too, right?
It's a
Right.
walking
Right.
trail.
Oh, awesome.
It's been a number of years since, we've had a major renovation there, and if when my son was young, it was in a state of somewhat disrepair, and a group of young mothers mostly stepped up and improved it, and so now you have a new revised effort here of folks who are interested and want to see us, get rid of the unsafe equipment, bring in, safe and long-lasting and high-quality equipment. And so I think as a parent of a couple of young kids, you're going to be really, really happy and impressed with what they're doing. And so there's a walking trail as part of it, and then a couple of play sets at least, major play sets. And they're quite something. They're quite spectacular. It'll be a good thing.
And this is also an example of how a citizen came to a town meeting to register the complaint of the disrepair of that playground equipment, and was basically told that, well, you need to plan for it and come back, where the town has responded and set aside this money to fix that problem.
So that was going to lead me into, is there a certain person that's heading up this effort? Is there a defined scope of the project already? Can there be later influences or suggestions as long as it stays within?
I would say our chairman of the Board of Selectmen, Teresa Sadak, is heading it up, and
Okay.
certainly she would, accept and, I think be happy to receive any feedback or to provide additional information. So please contact her. You can also contact Nathan White. He's been very involved in the planning. There are other people who are involved on a committee that is working towards this end.
Teresa's been working with some of the family people that are involved in the project.
That
so-
raised the question initially. Okay.
And may I add, it wasn't only young mothers that, Eileen Stiles, I don't know if
Okay.
anybody knows who Eileen was, but she was very, very active with the playground.
I'm only speaking to the effort I was involved in.
Well, I realize that, Don.
Which was, Aniko Pongratz and.
But I gotta give
It was-
a
shout out.
kudos to old lady.
Candace
you know?
Woolston